For over 50 years, Disney had the privilege of effectively running its own small private government in the state of Florida, granted those powers by the Florida legislature and Florida voters back in the 1960s before Walt Disney World opened. It became the source of a lot of controversy to Florida state legislatures over the next several decades as rumors would swirl of corruption and cronyism inside of what was formerly known as the Reedy Creek Improvement District. Last year, that privilege, I remind folks, not a right, but a privilege, was stripped from the Walt Disney Company and reformed under the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. And now we're starting to see exactly why that is. And today, we're going to discuss that with our friend Andrew Esquire from The Legal Mindset, because buckle up, folks. Wouldn't you know it, Disney and Reedy Creek were corrupt as hell. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valliant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Join us every Sunday afternoon at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show. Well, Disney is back in the news again, surprise, surprise, and this time it's a bit of confirmation from what it seems everybody knew, especially people in the state of Florida and particularly the Florida state legislature. We've been talking about the Reedy Creek issue since the whole debacle began roughly a year and a half ago with House Bill 1557, the Parental Rights and Education Bill, and all the fallout that occurred following that. And now we're at the point where, of course, it has been stripped. Reedy Creek has been stripped of its former powers and board composition and has now been replaced by the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. And just in the last 24 hours, news finally broke of an audit that was done on the former Reedy Creek and all of the corruption involved by the Walt Disney Company, nullifying perhaps a lot of Disney's public arguments as to why this was done. And joining us today to help walk us through all of the bits and pieces of this from The Legal Mindset, please help me welcome Andrew Esquire. Andrew, good to see you, buddy.
It is a pleasure to be here with you today talking about the financial, legal, and corporate wrongdoings of Disney. As always, it's great to work with you because we see in this audit all of what we've been talking about. We see egregious financial violations, really horrible. You see horrible governance, and you see things that are clearly violations of the law if they are brought to court. So you've got all of this in this audit that was put out by the CFTOD, but hiring independent experts, some experts with full confession that I worked with during my long time in Florida local government representing special districts. These people know Florida, they know governance, they know Florida law, and they can say, both in the legal sense, in the planning sense, and the financial sense, Disney was dirty. In fact, the quote from the audit is the most egregious case of cronyism they have seen in American history.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that. When we go back, and you and I have been on this since day one, back in early 22 when all of this started going down, and we kind of joined forces and started putting this together and have been following the story since then. And it seems like when you look at the amount of corruption that has been involved in this, and as I mentioned in the cold open to this video, I mean, this was a gift, a privilege, not a right, but a privilege that was bestowed upon this area of Florida that was largely run by the Walt Disney Company, although, as you've stated many times, they're not the only property owner in this district. There are other people paying taxes, and that's a big problem too, because that means other people's tax dollars have been abused and spent on things that they otherwise shouldn't have been. But of course, over time, the Florida state legislature decided, you know what, there's too much stuff going on in here. We have to get rid of this thing, and we have to reform it.
And this audit shows that not only were their tax dollars misspent, but they were actually misallocated and mislabeled. They didn't properly account for those when they took those in. They were charging those as common area maintenance, saying, oh yeah, we're going to charge you common area maintenance and we're going to double tax you because you're still going to pay taxes, but you're also going to pay us common area maintenance. So you're essentially double taxing the other folks in the district while Disney is gaining its tax money back by self-dealing contracts.
Yes.
A huge issue, which I have brought up over and over again, was Reedy Creek Energy Services. So I was glad to see this crazy situation brought to light in this audit where the district spent $70 million in bond funds on assets and equipment that essentially went over to Disney. And Disney now is controlling this. Now, they don't technically own it, but they're not allowing the district, which owns it, to access this equipment, to access the assets, to go on the property. This is insane. This is wildly against Florida and federal law. And on top of that, you see that it's a pattern. It's a pattern of corruption, of agency capture, of bribery, of confusion, of confusing everybody as to the relationship between Disney and RCID and all the other entities. And it goes back decades. And it's finally coming to light. It's something we've called out for the last 2 years. And this audit exposes to the world. And there is so much within this audit, so much that you really do need to go in and check it out yourself. Of course, if you want some guidance, I've got a video on my channel, as well as a summary coming out of the crimes that were implicated here. But certainly we're going to be talking about it a lot on your channel and in your lives as well.
Yeah, indeed. And I'm going to pull up one of the many articles out there. This is from Fox Business. And this is talking about Disney's tax district accused of shady dealings amid DeSantis' standoff, quote, akin to bribes. And there's another article out there from our friends that are always behind a paywall, no matter where you go, the Orlando Sentinel, that far more favorable to Disney in their interpretation of this. But one thing, as people are going to learn as we talk about this, is what makes this so bad and so damning is that it's very clear from the audit, based on evidence, including actual emails out there that they have copies of. Disney knew what they were doing. They knew it was wrong, and they did everything in their power to conceal it under the guise of basically a bunch of bunk. So this is,
and the professionals knew, by the way, the lawyers knew, the administrators knew, the people at the top knew. They knew what they were doing was not right. They knew what they were doing was not something they should be doing. Or at the very least, in some circumstances, they were grossly negligent in how they accounted for things and their due diligence and what they bought and what they looked at. They had no bid contracts. They had ridiculous standards for RFQs, RFPs, right? They had absolutely no whistleblower policies, no internal controls. There's so much that's just standard practice in government that they did not have here today. And by saying, by the way, they say akin to bribes. One thing I want to point out here, Valliant, is that you've read an audit or two, and I've read tons of government audits. In fact, I've helped edit government audits. If one thing I know about an audit is always going to be safe, conservative, and very safe, so far away from even implying there was something untoward. This audit is nothing like that. It comes out clear as day, with all but saying Disney is guilty of it, saying there are prospective crimes here that if you look into it, you're highly likely to find X. This is one of the most clear audits I've ever seen, which is something I've never seen in my entire life of looking at audits. They're supposed to be boring, but this one is written like a novel.
I was going to say, audits are typically statements of unbiased fact. But this one, the unbiased fact in the audit is so compelling and so damning that it's almost impossible not to do what you just said. And that's kind of the problem. Right off the bat, and I love this quote, how this article leads off, the district, talking about the former Reedy Creek, now CFTOD, the district is not home to any schools, any hospitals, or libraries, and instead foists those costs upon the surrounding communities which must supply those services for Disney employees and their families, the report notes. And the reason I bring this up, because we still get questions, of course, Andrew, and I know you do too, about, well, what's the difference between this and what they just gifted to Universal Studios? I want to remind folks that the Universal Studios new special taxing district that was just put out there for this new development, they're in partnership with this new rail line in Florida and Epic Universe and bringing tourists in from the airport and down from Miami, is that it is specifically designated as a non-residential special taxing district. It is deliberately specialized as a commercial district. Reedy Creek was not, of course, set up that way because of the promise that there would be an actual city, a community built. Then Walt Disney passed away, and then the Disney Company decided, nah, we're not going to do that anymore. That was fault number one. That was, promise violation number one. So I want to make it clear to everybody watching that is a massive distinction between that and basically all the other 1,800 some odd special taxing districts out there. They are functioning as they were allowed to do. They were granted a privilege, and they are all operating, or should all be operating, within the confines of those specific Florida statutes. Now, tell us about some of the things that this audit found, Andrew. What was Disney doing?
So I've got the audit pulled up, but it says right here, there's a beautiful quote. While the villages or Universal Studios might be located in a special district, the super special nature of Disney's special district was a privilege only Disney enjoyed. Being exempt from the requirements that bound other large developments and all other special districts clearly gave Disney a leg up on the competition. That's a quote from the audit, right? Mm-hmm. So the audit itself identifies the fact that Disney's privileges were special. They were super. They were above and beyond everybody else. It was non-competitive. And what this does is it is 80 pages, yes, 80 pages documenting all of not just the wrongdoings, but the reasons why RCID never should have existed in the first place. RCID came in promising one thing, but we were given another. The author of the audit, the compiler who summarized it, says it was a mousetrap. I prefer to call it a rat trap. But that being said, it was bringing you in with the cheese of futurism. They were luring you in with urban development, with futurism. Epcot, the original Walt's experimental prototype type community of tomorrow. That was the cheese. Florida loved it. They loved the cheese. The problem is we never got that. There's no hospitals, there's no schools, there's no social services. There's really nothing for the public. That district only benefits Disney and is almost entirely through its history solely worked for the purpose of Disney, which is the definition of agency capture and the opposite of the definition of a government.
Yeah, nothing was being run as it was promised to being run. And I love this quote from the audit here. A quote, as comprehensively documented within for years, the company treated, that is Disney, treated the district employees like Disney employees. For instance, providing complimentary annual passes and steep discounts, benefits and perks that were akin to bribes. Not surprisingly, then, the district's employees believed that it was their job to prioritize the interests of Disney. And in the report, and talk about some of this, it wasn't just that they were giving stuff away. It's that the district was spending roughly $2 million a year buying annual passes for employees as perks. They got discounts on cruise ships voyages and merchandise and all kind of stuff.
But here's the crazy thing, Valliant. Here's what's insane about this is that they got all those discounts, they got all those benefits, they got those special tickets, and RCID was reimbursing Disney for that, was paying Disney for those discounts and special tickets. Right. But they were telling employees, they were telling the baseline employees, oh, it's a special benefit Disney's giving you for free. They thought that Disney was giving it out as free gifts the entire time. They had no idea that the tax dollars were actually going to pay for that. RCID upper management and Disney colluded to lie to their employees, to confuse them, to mislead them into believing that Disney was giving it out of the goodness of its heart, whereby no, they were actually using as a way to recapture their tax revenue and bill everybody else for the actual expenses of running the district.
And more importantly, Andrew, they were, if I'm not mistaken, they were also lying to the state of Florida.
Oh, and they were lying. They were also lying to the IRS, which is something as well that they have said, we are reporting this to the IRS in the audit. going to the IRS with this, and we have now changed the way it works. They no longer offer benefits, they offer money, right? So that's a legitimate system because it's neutral, right? Money is neutral. Spend money anywhere. There's no benefit there. You just get money, right? Which is fantastic. Right.
Yeah.
But they're reporting
spending money, just to be clear, Andrew, spending money, the district is spending money in terms of cash to employees.
To give extra cash to employees to say, here's money. You can spend it on whatever you want. We're sorry Disney lied to you. That was illegal. That was a bribe in most cases. That was essentially a bribe, effectively a bribe. And once it goes to trial, I'm sure that that's the direction it will go.
Yes.
However, we can't do that. It's clear we can't do that. We have to stop doing this, and therefore, here's money. But the other thing is, Valiant, is that we have a failure to report it as a taxable benefit. They never reported those park passes as benefits.
Yeah,
so they always were off the books.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big one right there. That's a real big one.
Let's talk about that, the whole off the books situation. Let's get to this because that was, to me, that was the biggest thing. And this goes to the issue that both Disney and their puppet board on the Reedy Creek Improvement District, that is, as I remind folks, the pixie dusters out there and the Disney adults, the apologists for Disney, people like the Orlando Sentinel, we see you. Okay,
yeah, I've always seen you guys. I've always seen you guys.
Y'all don't seem to understand. They think that Disney was entitled to this district. They had a right to do what they wanted with it. It was their government. And they seem to miss the fine line, the clear fourth wall defining, no, this is a public body sanctioned by the state of Florida. The legislature giveth, the legislature may taketh away if you done violated the rules, which they did. Right. And it's so bad, and it was so obvious, and they knew, and this was the key, folks. Listen up. The key is that Disney and Reedy Creek both knew this was wrong. Because of what Andrew just said, they were hiding this. They were not categorizing these expenses. They were not reporting them as they should have been reported, because if they had been reported, if they should have, this would have happened years ago in terms of the audit and the sanctions coming down on them now, because it was illegal. It was in violation of Florida state law.
But guess what? They were able to get out of auditing requirements for special districts because they were grandfathered into the 1960s
1967
law. They were grandfathered in before all the audit requirements. Now they're required to go get an independent financial audit every year. In Rut-Row, we're looking at the books and they don't look good. They look very dirty. And that was the
big reason that Disney did not want this to happen. This is why they freaked out. They dragged Florida into court. Ron DeSantis, the CFTOD, the new board, into court, is because they knew if all of a sudden Reedy Creek had to operate under the same set of rules, 189 and 190, if I'm not mistaken, of Florida state statutes, Andrew, if they had to operate under those same rules like all the other 1,800 to 2,000 special taxing districts in Florida, this is what would happen. They would uncover the corruption. They would uncover the seemingly, allegedly, tax evasion that is going on here.
Seems a lot like it. Smells a lot like
maybe some ERISA violations as well in terms of employee benefits. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and this is what Disney was
bond
fearful
funds
of.
Because they built the lime grapefruit. Something they mentioned this, the lime grapefruit and orange garage at Disney Springs. You've all probably used them if you've ever gone there, right? Mm-hmm. Those were built by bond funds. Well, who do those garages really benefit other than Disney? What other property holders have access and use over those facilities? Is there any other taxpayers that can use those? Are they public facilities? No, they solely benefit Disney. But yet, for the $70 million they spent on those, $10 million was financed by other people in the district.
Yeah.
That's not right. That's certainly not something that is supposed to go on in a government that is being run properly. And there are potential violations for that if they're brought in and if they're investigated. And frankly, at this point, I don't see any way that people like the IRS, the SEC, can ignore this, because it has been so publicly put out there by auditors that you can't really look away. You've got to at least investigate it at a certain point when it's put out there and the auditors are claiming, hey, This is not done right. We are self-confessing that our own organization, because CFTOD is a successor to RCID, our own organization did this wrong. I think they've got to look into it. I don't think there's any way they can ignore it if they are self-confessing that these crimes happened according to their own records just a year, 2 years, 3 years ago.
There was a story in this the part that I found the most amusing, and I don't know if you saw this one, was there was a 50% discount built in for Reedy Creek employees. Basically, they were getting the Disney employee, the Disney corporate, like legit Disney employee corporate discounts for the Disney cruise lines. Now, for Disney employees, that's a perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that kind of benefit for the company to give their employees benefits. But the company, Disney, was giving these benefits to public entity, a government's employees. They were not being reported. And it was so much so, and Disney knew what they were doing was wrong because there were emails that were captured. There were reports of Reedy Creek employees trying to book Disney cruise vacations. And they would call up and they would have to make special inquiries saying, no, I'm with Reedy Creek, because they couldn't.
I'm with Reedy Creek. Send me to a special hotline.
They couldn't automatically find, like if you were a Disney employee that you booked a voyage on, you were on a list as a Disney employee. There was, you're John Smith that works in the Orlando park. Okay, here's your 50% discount. Reedy Creek couldn't do that. They had to call in because they were told they had to keep it off the books because of sunshine laws in Florida.
Oh,
they knew.
Now they care.
They literally say in the email, like, no, we have to keep this off the record because of the sunshine laws in Florida. They knew they were violating the law. They damn well knew they were violating the law. This is where we are. This is what Disney was terrified of, was all of this coming out. If they lost control of Reedy Creek, which they have, and an audit happened, which now it has.
Which it has.
And here we are. Everything that we knew, everything that I think a lot of
year
people
ago we knew this. We called this out a year ago, and we're like, oh, just wait, because they're building the case, and this is the bombshell. This audit has been the bombshell they've been building over a year. It's going to keep us busy for a long, long time. I certainly want to get a hold of some of those exhibits for you guys to look at, some of those financials. I'm sure you and Mexican Iron Man, a lot of the other guys will have a blast with those financials, especially looking through the district administrator Classy's $166,000 American Express bill that he racked up going through various charges that were reimbursed, including special Disney events, dinners, all this other stuff. And that's just during a 15-month period. Right. Yep. So there's so much going on. And Disney this entire time has been accusing DeSantis of cronyism, has been accusing Florida of playing favorites.
Right.
That has all been exposed as projection. This was all because cronyism was the letter of the day for Disney. It was what they were doing for decades, and they have been exposed.
Yeah, and one of the things this plays into as a final thought here, and this is what's key. We've talked about this stupid lawsuit that Disney filed against DeSantis in Florida and CFTOD. And they came in with all of these allegations, which, of course, since then, in the past couple of months, they have now reduced to one claim, which is y'all violated my First Amendment rights. Which, of course, is bogus. Reedy Creek and Disney are separate entities. They are not one and the same. There was no punitive action taken against the Walt Disney Company by the state of Florida. Nobody is debating that fact, and that is a fact. Reedy Creek is not Disney. Reedy Creek is not a subsidiary of Disney. It is a government sanctioned by the state of Florida. That's number one. But Disney's argument for this First Amendment right claim was already weak sauce completely. Now, if they need a backup argument, what do you think of this, Andrew? It's like,
so this audit and all the exhibits are going into evidence in both cases, and this completely destroyed. It was already dead, but this puts it so far underground. There is no way for Disney to prevail in the freedom of speech federal lawsuit case, because all you need is one valid reason, just one. And it doesn't even have to be valid, just a reason other than, I don't like this person because of their political beliefs or whatever other protected speech they might be saying. All you need is one good reason. You got 80 pages of reasons, okay? You've got 80 pages of deeply and potentially criminal reasons why you would shut down the RCID, the Reedy Creek Improvement District. So there is no way they end up repealing it, sending it back to that, particularly with these violations. I can see that being very much ruled in Florida's favor and DeSantis's favor very soon in the federal case, and a similar situation following in the state case. Of course, Disney, as I predicted and I said from the beginning, they're masters at procedure, they're masters at delay. They managed to delay both cases very long, but not on the substance, purely on the procedure. So I do think they will prevail. It will take a while. Disney will delay as long as they can delay. But with this bombshell, they are absolutely dead in the water.
Yeah, and it's funny. Even last week, Bob Iger still sitting on the stage at the New York Times Deal Book Summit. The question came up about all of this stuff, and he sat there. Well, this is about, or we're going to live in a country where corporations can have their rights of free speech, complaining about the same garbage, the same lies, the same nonsense, the same irrelevancies that he has for the past year. And then this comes out. I don't think it's an accident they released it this week after his little spiel last week on stage. And just let's go ahead and sink it, is the attitude.
Well, Valliant, Bob may be not sitting on stage anytime soon. He may be sitting in a criminal deposition for potential charges. So we're going to talk a lot more about that on my channel, surely more on yours. And
Indeed.
Thank you so much for having me join you today. It's always a pleasure.
Glad you were here. Make sure you check out Andrew Esquire over on The Legal Mindset. Folks, thanks for joining us. Make sure you check out those live shows every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Check out the live shows that Andrew does on The Legal Mindset as well. Thank you guys for being here. And until next time, take care. Make sure you're subscribed to Valliant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.